avoided high fructose corn syrup.
Yep, I don't touch soda and soda.
Yeah, ever since I didn't really like soda before, but now I really don't like high fructose corn syrup. I just try to stay away from it. Is there high fructose corn syrup in your water?
I don't know. It's from the fountain. There was a whole bunch of gunk in it.
But can you believe that? I mean, how they actually lost money.
But I used to do Coke.
They lost money on their acre of land, and the government actually paid them.
So then they made a little bit of money.
And they somehow made money, even though
I thought it was a ripoff that after all that, they couldn't actually track their corn to find out where the hell it went.
Did you want
No.
to talk
I think that was too bad.
We're talking about human trafficking. This
But
is
still,
perfect
how
for you.
battery acid and the...
She wants to traffic you into this room.
This is your one guy who read you read the talent code, or did you bring the Buccaneer?
What is it?
I didn't read it.
What is it?
The talent code.
What is the talent code?
I didn't read it.
Did you read it?
Christians
It's
read
fun
it.
practice and how it was crazy.
Daniel
I'm
Coyle.
a little way through it, but it shows how the best people, what was it, the Russians in ping pong and some of the best musicians and how they learn things really quick by doing it a certain way.
Oh.
It's crazy.
Daniel Coyle investigated a bunch of world-class athletes and geniuses and found a common... He went so far as to say you could tell how good somebody is at something by asking how they practice. And he terms it a deep practice.
Yeah,
where if you're doing something for 2 hours and you think it's 2 minutes, as opposed to doing something for 12 hours and you think it's 24 hours. A deep practice is when you're just completely lost in it.
And all they needed was 5 minutes, I think, of practice, and they were
and how they've looked at
world-class players or something. It was crazy.
The growth of the myelin sheath and how it's stronger during a deep practice, and so.
Yeah, if you can get yourself into a flow state.
But see, passion is even better than flow. Because you said get yourself into a flow state.
But
that you have to, it's like manufactured passion, in a way.
Well, I don't know.
It's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad.
What I'm saying is I love being in a flow state.
I know, I do too.
But I don't know how to get myself into a flow state. There's no easy formula for getting myself into a flow state. But when I'm in it, I love being in it and I feel amazingly productive. And a lot of the work that I do actually is to get into the flow state. And a lot of the work I do in my education method is to not feel too bad about not being in a flow state right now. Forgiving myself for not being in a flow state instead of beating myself up for that. But I'll do something like I wrote a chapter in my book, a new chapter in my book that's coming out in the paperback version that's coming out next year.
Of this? Paperback version of Buccaneer Scholar?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it has a new chapter?
It has a new chapter. An extra
is
chapter.
Is it in German yet?
The original book is in German.
How long
I can send you a German version and an
really
Italian version of the book.
I would love both.
Yeah, okay.
I'll pay you for it.
No, I'll just send it. I'll send the German and the...
Why was the original in German?
No, I wrote mine in English, and then it got translated into German.
The first translation was
the original,
German.
Yeah, it's been translated into German. And then, but I wrote a new chapter for the book, for the paperback version that's coming out.
What's it called?
The new chapter, it's called Stars to Steer By. It's about Vincent van Gogh, Mark Twain, and
Mark Twain.
And yes, and Charles Darwin. He was crazy successful.
I don't know. Mark Twain was out there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a definite buccaneer. Lost a lot of money investing in inventions that didn't work.
Mark Twain was
he didn't understand testing.
Is that what he died from?
No, he died from being really, really old. He died at the 70, 75. He was something like 75 when he died. And yeah, he smoked, he drank, but he wasn't an alcoholic. I don't think so.
No, I'm thinking someone else.
I don't know.
Maybe they got
So anyway, I
Heads
wrote
around
about these three guys and how neither of them knew what they wanted to be when they were growing up until they were 27. That's when they finally found out what they wanted to do. And before that, they were just messing up and wandering. And Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, he actually almost committed suicide right before he got famous. He was so depressed. He was completely penniless. He had absolutely no money. He had been fired for being a troublemaker from his job as a journalist. And he thought, oh, maybe I should just pull the trigger. He actually held a gun to his head and decided not to kill himself. And then he went on to become one of the richest men in America, one of the most best-known people in the world, one of the most sought-after speakers in the world, about 1 year after that. So, amazing, this guy. Anyway, I wrote a chapter about those three guys because they're good examples for us to make us relax and say, maybe we don't have to worry about ourselves so much. Okay, especially if you're under the age of 27. And so I wrote the chapter, but the thing is that I was supposed to write the chapter last April. But I tried to write it last April, and I started writing, and I wrote a couple thousand words. I needed to write 2,500 words. That's all I needed to do. And I wrote at least 2,000 words, and I threw it away. And it's like, it's not working. So I tried something else, and that didn't work. And then I decided I wanted to write about my son, and I wrote a bunch about him, and that didn't work. Then my publisher came to me and said, like, well, when are you going to be done with this? You have to get done with this really, really soon. And I said, well, I'm trying to, and I've got some ideas. Well, maybe you should just send them to us. So I did. I just sent them some ideas I had. And then I immediately decided I didn't like any of those ideas. And then I had stumbled into Van Gogh, reading about Van Gogh. And I just stumbled into that while I was procrastinating. I just learned about all these letters about Van Gogh, and I started getting into that. And I had already read a bunch of biographies of Darwin for no reason at all. I just got interested in Darwin. And then I was wondering, well, there's Van Gogh's letters, and there's Darwin's letters online. Maybe there's somebody else's letters online, and that's how I found Mark Twain. All his letters are online too. And reading someone's letters throughout their whole life is a great way to find out how they learned and how they saw their own successes and failures and all that. That's why I wanted to read letters. So then suddenly I realized that I could write about these three guys. I hadn't read about them to research to write this chapter. It's just that I was doing that by procrastination. And I realized, I can write about them. And then I saw how it tied into my son, because I wanted to write about my son too. And it tied in. And all that happened in like a 1 hour period where I realized what I needed to do. And then I started writing, and it was suddenly really easy to write. And I think the chapter at that point took me 3 hours to write, probably 3 hours. But it took me 6 weeks to get to the point where I knew what I wanted to write. And I think this is what you were talking about when you find your passion, and when if you know who you are, then it takes you years to find out who you are. It doesn't take you that long to be who you are. But it might take you a lot of wandering and a lot of fretting just to find out. But is it because of,
I totally see that in the lab, but is it because of the way we've done things up until now? I mean, if we start over, with kids 4 or 5 years old.
Well, I don't know, but I don't think so.
Really?
I think it's really complicated. It's very hard to know what you're... See, it's not like you go in and there's the answer written there. The answer is in your reaction to life.
Being exposed to a whole bunch of
things. Yeah, you're
things.
exposed to something, and it's like Erin. We were talking to Erin, and she started working with these kids because of Spanish, and then she realized she just wanted to work with kids, period.
Right.
And that's resonated with her. Well, she didn't know she wanted to work with kids before that happened. That wasn't why she went to do